All right, welcome to Roots of Reality Experiences. Today I'm joined by Rob O'Gara, who's the assistant coach for Yale University's hockey team. Additionally, Rob is the most decorated defenseman in Yale hockey history and was a crucial part of Yale's 2013 national championship team. Lastly, Rob also played in the NHL for the Boston Bruins and the New York Rangers. So, Rob, thanks for coming on today.
Ben, thanks for having me.
So, just to start off, when did you first get interested in hockey?
So my probably what got me interested in was my dad, and that started well before I was born. So he grew up. I grew up on Long Island. He's a big Islander fan, and he grew up basically during their heyday when they won four Stanley Cups in a row in the beginning of the '80s. And he was a football player. He never. I mean, hockey's always been kind of cost prohibitive.
Sure.
Um, Somehow it's getting worse, which is a shame. But um, so if anything, he was playing in the street. And but his love for the game was, I mean, he became a diehard fan. He loved it, and then he passed it on to me. And um, my first skating lesson, I was like 3.5 years old, and I couldn't stand up on the ice, which was so it wasn't a great start, but I fell in love with it from a real early age.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I guess you probably then went through like the hockey development programs, then started playing the lower levels, and
Oh yeah, yeah. No, the learn to skate, then mini mites. Like I don't know if the names have changed,
I have no
but
idea. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, yeah,
But yeah, no, started real young, and then you get the floor hockey sticks in the house, and you're playing in the street more and more, and that's where you really fall in love with the game.
yeah, yeah. No, that's always cool. It's a fun journey growing up playing hockey. I mean, I did it. And definitely like skating. If you cannot skate well, you're just not going to survive as you get to the higher levels. So my
Well,
career peaked in middle school. So
I love the conversations when they'll have an argument on, a podcast or something where, can a football player play in the NBA or vice
yeah, yeah.
versa? No one will ever bring up the NHL
No,
because
that's
the
right. There's
skating part
yeah,
it's
changes
important.
everything.
Yeah.
So what led you to Yale then?
So hockey recruiting is extremely complicated. When I was growing up, I, I don't know what the exact rules were, but I know that there weren't many in terms of coaches being able to communicate with potential athletes. I remember kids on Long Island committing to schools when they were 14,
Sure.
um, like freshmen in high school. And that was not the case for me. So I grew up on Long Island. I played through my my under 16 second year. So you play 2 years, but um, and it was kind of a strange point because on Long Island back then, the next level was not great. So I was slated to play at the next level on Long Island, and I was going to go into my senior year of public school. And honestly, at that point, the best story is I went on a college tour journey up basically New England with my mom, and we stopped everywhere. And I threw an email out to basically every school's coach that had a hockey team,
Wow.
and one responded, and it was Babson College, D3 program, and I
Yep.
sat down with the coach, and he talked about their club team for about a half hour, and then said, it's a great option for people to keep playing in
Yeah.
college. And I was like, okay, great. And
Wow.
yeah, and that, so that was before my junior year on Long Island. I had a good year, not great. Nothing was changed. I didn't talk to anyone. And during summertime, going into my senior year, ready to play with this junior team on Long Island, a coach at Milton Academy, just south of Boston, a prep school, gave my parents a call. He was someone that we had talked to in the past, but prep school, we didn't understand it and we couldn't afford it. And that was just kind of
Sure.
where we left it. And he basically said, hey, we had a guy fall through. Is there interest? We can pull some strings. And this was probably mid-July. by August 1st, I was accepted. I was on campus 3 weeks later, and that Christmas is when I committed to Yale. And so that literally that th very small stretch of time changed everything. I kind of I was a late bloomer in hockey, and
Yeah.
everything kind of clicked at that point. And I had a really good first half of the year, and I started talking to schools, and my what I started to realize, and this came from both my parents, it was, hey, like if you can go somewhere, play a high level of hockey, and be in a school where you wouldn't get in without it,
Yeah.
that's ideal. And my mom had very high aspirations for me before this whole process. So Yale was one of the places we stopped, and strictly through the lens of being a student and doing that tour. I felt a
Yeah.
little in over my head, but I loved it. It was incredible. And when they came to the table and I had a real understanding for what I wanted and what their hockey program was about, that decision became pretty easy, especially because when I went to prep school, I repeated my junior year, and they were willing to have me do that year, do my senior year, and go right into school, instead of taking years in between to play junior hockey or whatever you have. And
Wow.
um, yeah, so that was it. It was a whirlwind. It was crazy. Everything happened very, very fast in that window of time. It was like 3, 4 months maybe, um, and then that was my path.
That's insane. I had no idea about that. It also just goes to show because I think a lot of people, we'll talk about professional sports and you can even say college sports to a certain extent as well, where they're like, oh, the best people are always playing, and it's like, well, a lot of this is also about opportunity. If you don't have that opportunity like you had, where you just had to be in the right spot at the right time, then you probably never would have been, playing college hockey at the high level or going to the NHL. It's There's so much of this is circumstantial as well as the talent and as but
Oh, absolutely. No, it's really it's nuts. Every time I kind of think about it, I got very, very lucky. And the coach at Milton at that prep school was, I mean, he'll never take credit for it, but he changed my life. But just taking a
yeah,
shot and needing a guy to fill a roster spot. Like
yeah,
I can't imagine, I would have been a really good player for that team on Long Island. But it wouldn't, no colleges were coming to watch those games, and my parents were certainly not interested in having me go out to the Midwest and play another year or two before I get into a school. Like that just wasn't something that was in the cards for us. I mean, it was in the cards, but I don't think they would have let me do it. And um, I just so fortunate. You're right. It's so circumstantial. It's wild.
yeah. I mean, it is crazy. People find themselves, I guess, it's just about like taking advantage of opportunities, I guess, and also seeking them out like you did. I mean, clearly, you're searching for paths that could work, and you found something that just clicked. So,
Yeah, no, and I mean, even from I think about my mom more than anyone else, like ripping that Band-Aid off of leaving. Yeah, she thought she had me for another year at home. And
yeah, yeah,
well, all of a sudden I'm gone. And things, I mean, everything changed. I was in a dorm room with three guys from all around the world. It was nuts how
yeah.
fast. And but it really was just, hey, like, why not give this a shot if we can make it work as a family, and thank goodness I did.
Definitely. So, were you when you were at Yale, and obviously you're a freshman going in, were you expecting to start that year as a freshman?
I I didn't know what to expect. And and like now being on the other side, I understand like okay, if we had a draft pick coming in, that okay, this is a player who is probably younger. I was the youngest guy on our team that year. That needs the development time to reach his potential. Um, and I kind of thought it would be a runway. Like, hey, like I knew I needed to earn any ice that I got, but I need time to acclimate to this level. Like, guys in my class turned 21 like a month into being on campus. And
Wow.
yeah, crazy. And so that was I had no expectations to hop right in. I knew I was going to go there. I was going to work as hard as I could and try to earn it. And that's the nice thing about our head coach then is our head coach now. And you could be an 18-year-old freshman or a 25-year-old senior. It does, if you're the best player, you're going to play. And the guys that work every day and maybe they can't get in, like that's yeah, they're often the ones that will come in and say, hey, like what can I do to get it? Like, it's just the culture is that of, hey, if you're gonna help us win, you're gonna play. I know we always appreciated that, and that was a driving force because we had a really good team that year. We
Right.
had really good teams all 4 years, and um, knowing that the guy next to you is going to push you every day and that he needs you to push him, it creates a really interesting just accountability and trust and all of that together. Like it was just the perfect environment for me personally to push myself so that I could be a contributing member of a team like that. But no, I had no expectations of going in there and playing as much as I was able to.
So timeline wise, when were you drafted?
So I was drafted after that first year at prep school. So
Okay. Okay.
I was, yeah, so I was rising senior at Milton. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that makes sense. So you went to Yale as a draft pick, and they're like, okay, so
Mhm.
obviously the talent is there, um, but the expectation in terms of how that would play out is a little unknown, I guess. So
Oh yeah. I mean, you walk in there and they're, I'm trying to think. We had one senior defenseman, we had one junior defenseman, we had a bigger crew of sophomore D, and we had three of us in my class. And all three of us by mid-year were playing pretty consistently. Um, and I I think that I mean even looking back, like that's a pretty big deal. But all that being said, seeing those guys who had been there, who had done that, who were comfortable, who were strong, who were men, and
yeah,
that was intimidating. But at the same time, it never felt like, oh, these guys are taking our ice. It's hey, these guys are going to help us win,
sure.
and that was powerful. But yeah, it was a kind of a crazy time.
So I'm curious then because I know about the kind of the history of this team a fair amount. I can go into more of that later, um,
Yeah.
but but at what point did you think that this team could be like a title contender?
I'll never forget one of the first times that we got together as a team, just hanging out, and uh, our captain, it wasn't like he got up on a soapbox and started speaking, but we were probably playing the silly game, and he said, "Hey, like, listen, these are like we're contending. We want to win the Ivy League. We want to win our league. We want to win our league playoffs, and we want to win a national championship." And that really was the first time that I was like, okay, like, we're not just here to see if we can do well. This is an expectation, and it's a lofty one, even for the best team in the country going to this next year. If they say
Sure.
we're going to win national championships, okay, you got to earn them. But then it was like, okay, this is our mindset, and it wasn't just let's be the best Ivy League team and see what happens. Um, that set a tone, and I would say it was pretty early in the year. It was right around Thanksgiving, so we were only about a month into the season. We went out to Colorado. We played Denver and Colorado College back to back. And Denver was number two in the country. Colorado College was number 14. And we swept them. We won both games. And we got home. It's like, okay, we're good. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and that was probably the point where it was like, okay, now it was almost as if the pressure went up because out there, no one expected us to win those two games.
No, no.
But yeah, no, and then we take both of them, we come back and it's like, okay, now there's expectations from other people, and now we gotta hold that up. But man, like our goalie got hot at the right time. I mean, he was so good. He's now the goalie coach of the Rangers, Jeff Malcolm. Um, and everything clicked. That's the beauty of it. But that's really when it felt like, hey, we are a contender in this.
Yeah, I mean, so this, yeah, that team, the 2013 Yale hockey team, is probably one of the most fascinating sports stories I've seen in my lifetime. Because you guys were not in any like preseason power rankings. I think there was like 20 teams listed, and you guys were not one of them. and I just remember because so I grew up a Yale hockey fan. My dad went to Yale.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
he worked for like the sports information department in the 80s and worked a lot with Tim Taylor,
Oh yeah.
Keith Elaine's predecessor. And so like we would go and we would meet with teams in like the locker room and stuff under Tim Taylor. As a kid, I was doing that. And so we always follow Yale hockey, and I think as the season went on, I was starting to think, well, this team, I could see them making a run in the tournament. I didn't have any expectations of national championship, but I was like, yeah, I could see them making a run. This would be fun. So like when you got into the tournament, obviously you guys were the lowest seed. You were 4th seed in the tournament in your region. So what were the expectations at that point? You're now in the tournament. You made it. What's going through your heads?
Yeah, I mean, and it was arduous getting in.
Yep.
You might remember this, but I try to block it out of my mind. We went to Atlantic City, where the Final Four for the league was at the time,
Yeah.
and we didn't score a single goal. And
I
so
think I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, so they used to have a consolation game in our league, and they got rid of it because it almost took us out of the tournament. They realized it doesn't help anyone. And so we needed, I believe, and I might have this backwards, but we needed Michigan to beat Notre Dame in their conference championship for us to get in. And if that didn't happen, then we were out. And of course, luck had it, we snuck in, and then it was almost like we went from, hey, like we're doing really well. We swept St. Lawrence at home. I think they had like 10 shots in 2 games. Like it was crazy how much we stifled them. And then we went out there and it was like, oh my God, this thing is gonna end. And then we got fortunate enough to get that second shot. And then like you said, not many people were expecting us to do anything out there, especially with how we finished. Um, and then we were able to, I think we used that to our advantage. Uh, Minnesota, we took their plane home. Like
Yeah.
they weren't planning on flying out on Friday, and it was yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, this is also funny for me because I was we flew out to the Frozen Four for that tournament. It was me, my dad, my brother. And we were at the national championship game. We had front row seats. I think it was, yeah, in the corner right up against the boards.
Nice.
And we my brother, I think at the time was a recent graduate from the University of Minnesota.
Oh wow.
And so he was like, he had supported Yale as a kid, but obviously as a Gopher, he was a little
Yeah.
upset that
I understand.
little upset that you guys eliminated Minnesota in the first round, but
I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I'd be upset too.
yeah, I think I even mentioned to him recently that I was going to have you on the podcast, and he said, make sure he knows that Minnesota fans hate the ECAC. So
That I could see. Oh my God. Yeah, because they lost to Union the next year. I
they
totally
they've been getting
forgot.
eliminated by ECAC teams for years now. Since Yale beat them.
And still, well, I think in the last 10 years, I think finally the league has earned some respect.
Yes, yes.
But before, like even when we made our run, the Easy AC was the nickname. Like Yeah, it's um no, the league is strong, and it's just the style of play. It's hard for these run and gun, more skill, like because you're gonna run into teams like ours and team like a Cornell who's just gonna pack it in, and
Yeah,
if you're beating your head against the wall, and at the end we'll win a 2-1 game. I don't care as long
yeah,
as we're moving on. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's so it is exciting to see that. I mean, as a league member, but
yeah. No,
yeah.
it is. It's incredible, and to see how much, yeah, that league has grown. So, um, so when you were in the national championship game, did you first off, like, what was that like? Just knowing that you're in the national championship game, because going from your story of, oh, hope I gotta fight for my ice time here, early on in your career at Yale, and now you guys are in the national championship game. You're a freshman. What's going through your head?
Even just the 4 games of the tournament, like that Minnesota game was probably the best game I played all year.
Yeah,
Then the North Dakota game, I stunk, and I didn't feel good. I was exhausted. The first game took a lot out of me, and I didn't play great. So then we're going into the semifinals, and I was more nervous for that UMass Lowell game than I
yeah,
was for the championship game, because
yeah,
now that felt like we were settled in, and we really knew our opponent. This was the fourth time we played them that year.
yeah,
And yeah, I think it was the first shift I got a penalty, but I lit up one of their guys, and it was actually a terrible call in hindsight. But then it was just you're in it, and that was not it was just another game, but it just you get into the flow of it, and you're in it, and like my dad he'll get a kick out of this, but I like, and we'll probably talk about it more, but playing in a game like that, playing at Madison Square Garden, like all these crazy places, and, um, the most nervous I think I've been in a sports setting. Like I went on a golf trip with my dad and all my uncles and his buddies, and sitting on that first tee, I was shaking like a leaf. I was so nervous, and they're making fun of me, like you do all this crazy stuff. Like
yeah,
how is this bothering you?
yeah.
I think it's just because you do it over and over again. It's not that it was just another game, but it kind of felt like it after a couple shifts.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah, sometimes those settings with just family members are the ones that bother you most, especially if you have a family. It sounds like your family is similar to mine, where you just get tormented by your uncles and
Yeah.
brother and dad, just making fun of you the whole time. Yeah, that's yeah, classic.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, so yeah, I think I remember when you made it to the championship game. Now I saw that Quinnipiac made it as well. I just thought to myself, I was like, "There's no way that Yale could lose to Quinnipiac in the final. Like nothing against Quinnipiac, but come on, like after the journey of the teams you beat to get there, I'm just like, no, no way. This can't finish losing to Quinnipiac.
Yeah, and hey, they got you there a couple of years ago, which
Yep,
in
they
me
they earned
just
their right. That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
felt bad for them losing because it is a similar story, of a team that wasn't expected to be there, and but
yeah, no, hey, they had a lot of good players that played a lot of professional hockey, and we did too. Maybe we didn't have I mean, either team. You're right. It was pretty similar. Like Minnesota and North Dakota, I think they had 15 draft picks each,
yeah,
and
just loaded with yeah,
yeah, we had like two or three, and one of ours didn't even play in that game. It really is fascinating, but yeah,
yeah,
that's why you play the game, right?
yeah. I mean, it was a super entertaining to watch from from the sideline there. Um, yeah, definitely. I still think it's probably the greatest sports story I've ever witnessed in my life, and especially in person by far, of course. But in general, I mean, it is kind of like a miracle on ice type of situation, just because I never thought growing up that I would see Yale win a national championship. I mean, for people that are not college hockey fans, like, I mean, the Ivy League schools are always at a disadvantage compared to like the big state schools like Minnesota. It's just not the same type of people you're bringing in to play, and a lot of your guys won't go on to play in the NHL. while like 80% of the team for a lot of these state schools will be going pro. So
Yeah, it's something that I didn't think about much when I was playing,
right,
but now obviously it's my job, so I got to think about it every day. But
yeah,
it is interesting, like walking into a rink to scout a game, and if it's a team that I haven't seen before, reaching out to the coach and saying who has the grades, and now all of a sudden the team is okay. I'm watching this half of the team, and then obviously caliber of play, the pool
yep,
goes down further, and then you start to get to know a family if you really like, and it might be cost prohibitive. And now like there's no scholarships. I can't
that's
offer
right,
guys money. Yeah, it's
yep,
um and and we have guys on the team that don't pay a dime because of financial aid, and we have guys that pay the full boat, and we have guys in the middle, and often that's kind of the hardest spot because it's enough to hurt a family, but it's not like that. It's because now you're in the middle ground. You're paying probably more than your family can afford, and it's a tough spot to recruit those guys, to keep those guys once they kind of get that information. It's um, yeah, I don't think people realize that those are real hurdles, and COVID beat us up, but the consistency that we're able to have under Coach Elaine before COVID, pretty remarkable. And it's not easy to maintain, especially like now we're trying to get it back.
sure.
And that's not the easiest thing, but it takes a long time. The recruiting and all of that. It's such a you see like stuff about it, and I know it's so much more complicated than people give it credit for. It really is crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is, you're at a huge disadvantage when it comes to recruiting since you can't offer scholarships. And so you have to kind of sell, like, okay, well, you're going to Yale, you're going to top schools in the world and you can play hockey there. But, if these are people that really are just looking to, play 1 year and then go pro, they're not going to be going to Yale probably. So, um, it is something that a lot of people don't understand because there's a huge gap between what Ivy League schools do to recruit players versus what the
Oh yeah.
Minnesotas or the Michigans or Boston College, etc. Um,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
now,
Yeah.
do you so I was thinking, it's funny when that national championship game was going on. This is kind of a side story. So I was at the time. I think I'm about your age. I think I'm a year younger than you, but I was in call. Let's see, was I? I think I was a senior in high school at the time when I saw you guys play, and I thought it would be funny. So when I went to the game, I brought because I knew I was gonna be front row, so I was like, I'm probably gonna be on TV, and I'm probably never gonna see Yale necessarily a national championship again in my life. So just I'm gonna bring something to kind of mix this up and maybe I'll get on TV. It'd be a pretty funny thing to do. People bring signs at big sporting events. So I brought like if you ever been to like a Spirit Halloween store or something like
Oh yeah,
that,
absolutely.
and they have, like these like monster baby type things. And there's
Okay.
one that was like a puppet. And so I like I bought one of these little monster baby puppet things. I'm sitting front row on the glass at the national championship game, and like I had painted like a blue Y on its forehead, and
Nice.
decked it out in Yale stuff. And of course, I was wearing like a Yale hockey jersey or something. And so during the game, like whenever, and I think I also had a cowbell too. And so like I would like move the puppet around and I'd have it like bang its head on the cowbell during the game. Super insane, looks so dumb, but I thought it was really funny. And like during the national championship game, I was on the jumbotron several times with this doll, and like
You earned it.
whatever there'd be like a Quinnipiac player in the corner or something like that. Maybe you're checking someone in the corner. I'd put like the doll up against the boards and like So, to a certain extent, I was basically on the team and helped you guys win there. So,
I, who knows who that distracted, you know?
but yeah, just a crazy side story. So just so you know, like I was kind of a big deal, part of that
You
team.
had a part of the win. I'll allow it.
So yeah, actually I have a picture that I can send you later. It's pretty ridiculous. But
Please do.
so, why do you think then, you know, moving on from this, Yale winning the national championship, which I'm sure your probably initial reaction after finally recognizing that, okay, you just won the national championship, you're probably just out of your mind at that point.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, I was, there are moments on the ice after where it's just like, I don't know if I want to cry, if I want to like
Yeah,
yell, like it was just like, this is incredible. Um, yeah, no, enjoying that next stretch of time with those guys and that group and knowing that six of them were moving on, whether it was to play hockey or what, and then we're gonna have another batch of guys coming in and things would, we gotta try to roll this thing over. It's that took a while to reset to that,
sure.
um but that's eventually what comes up. But that whole time was so much fun.
Yeah.
I don't think my freshman spring was my shining moment in the classroom by any means, but
I can
we made it
imagine that could
work.
be a distraction. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, nothing's perfect, but we made it.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, super amazing story. So thinking about the ECAC in general since then, what has allowed the ECAC to continue to do really well? I imagine a major factor is also the fact that, you guys can actually keep your teams together over years, while a lot of these Minnesota type teams are changing out players constantly because they're, going to the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, all the transfer portal stuff obviously has changed in the last handful of
Yeah,
years. Like that. I mean, even the big schools, while I was still playing, there was more consistency, but and the inconsistency was, hey, a sophomore is going to be a junior. He just signed in the NHL. He's leaving, so now
yeah,
you got to bring in a younger guy. That was where the turnover for those schools was a little more extreme. Now it's uh, we as Ivy League schools, kind of the half of the
yeah,
ECAC, there hasn't been as much uh, turnover or guys leaving. There have been, which is scary. My fear, which is kind of nuts, but we've lost recruits to other schools, poaching them.
yep,
Uh, there's no more gentleman's agreement to not talk to other schools'
yeah,
recruits, and other Ivy League schools have lost good players. All of a sudden now you do your job really well. You recruit a freshman who has a great freshman year. He's going to get phone calls and he's going to get, hey, and this is totally not the case, but he's going to get calls that say, hey, like, come be a hockey player, like, come, chase this.
oh,
You're going to be
sure,
in the NHL. Yeah, you
yeah,
can't do that there.
right,
Um, I mean, the blatant lie, but
yeah,
it's always going to be a little bit of a stereotype when it comes to an Ivy League school because our guys are able to do both and they're able to be hockey players first, which people don't understand. And the school wouldn't like me saying that, but that's
yep,
what it is. Um, but now with, I mean, we'll use our friends at Quinnipiac, like they had 7 grad transfers on the team that won.
wow,
And that fortunately is ending after this year, the fifth years. Um, so we won't have to fight against that. But the transfer stuff, like I feel for the kids who pay their dues for a year, 2 years, and okay, I'm a rising junior. I've worked my tail off. I've earned my spot now. And now all of a sudden they're bringing in 2 other juniors and 3 seniors
yep,
that are taking your spot. And this happens at a lot of places and it's unfortunate. I hate seeing like schools like in the Atlantic. You talk about my best buddy from school. His dad coaches at RIT, and they had a great year this last year. And all of a sudden, their best three players are gone because they're
Wow.
getting calls from these other schools, and they're probably being offered money,
Yep.
and they're being told the same thing. Um, and they're gone. It's a shame. I'll never be against the players having the freedom to get
Sure.
out of a crummy situation or to get into a better one if that's what they believe. Um, but how it's gone about a little behind the scenes or when it's not supposed to be happening, that's the crummy part of it that I don't think you could take out. But it's crazy. It's complicated. I'm glad that we don't really have to deal with the transfer portal at all. And I'll knock on wood when I say that because
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that I think has completely shifted the ground for college sports in general, or the transfer portal and the NIL money coming in. Um, it seems like we're basically turning college sports into just a minor league system for professional sports teams. Um, and I know that a lot of my uncles and my brother, my dad, all huge college sports fans, around the board, not just hockey. And for many of them, they feel like, uh, college sports is kind of dying, and like the school spirit behind it, the idea of like people not just going to a school so they can make it to the pros, but going to a school because they want to be a part of that school and be a part of that tradition at that school. And that's kind of fading away at a lot of places where it almost seems like, and I think, I guess, probably football would be the best example to see where it's going to be headed for other sports eventually. Because in football, you're basically going to have like the SEC, and that's gonna be it. All the other schools will be, basically like moving down a division almost, considering all the money the SEC teams be throwing at people. So
Oh, and they'll have 30 teams by that point.
that's
You
right.
know?
Yeah, they might as well just, yeah, yeah. I always joke with people at some point Alabama is going to join the NFL. It's just, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, so I hope that Yale is able to continue to kind of prevent that, and I think that Yale does have an advantage. I love like the RITs or other school Quinnipiacs don't have, and that's just the brand name Yale. To say you're going to Yale, obviously there's dual things there, not only for hockey but also just the institution that you're a part of that will serve you the rest of your life. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, if you're choosing Yale, you have that value in the Yale experience side of it. You don't just,
right,
we're not, I mean, especially right now as we try to rebuild into, being a national contender, it's a collective. It's, hey, like I want this degree, but I also want to play professional hockey. Um, Whereas, I'm not discounting any degrees from any other
of
places,
course,
but
yeah,
it's not at that level. That's just the
yep,
case. And leaving a degree from somewhere else, from a non-Ivy League school, it's not as painful or not as hard a decision, I don't think, as
yeah,
a guy choosing to leave an Ivy. And that's because they have that value, because they understand that degree is, like you said, it's going to serve you down the road. You play 15 years in the NHL and you still got to do something after, and you're 38 years old.
yep,
It's something that, hey, and some people will scoff at that and say, like, that's, I can golf every day. I'll be fine. I played 15 years in the NHL. I'm good. Um, but it's something that obviously I'm biased towards. I'm selling it, and
well,
I live. But it's but that's what it is. Like if you're choosing an Ivy, you're choosing it for more than just hockey, and that's not discounting the hockey at all. And that's what I think protects us a little bit from the transfer stuff. And
yep,
I mean, who knows? Money is it's important, and those families in the middle, for example, if they're all of a sudden they're being offered a full scholarship and 10 grand a year, that's something that it's you have to at least sit back and think about it. So it's yeah, it's you're right. There is that protection in a way, but and this is just maybe the pessimist in me. I want to make sure that we're as protected as we can be because I've thought that with recruits
Yep.
and guys that we've put so much time into in these last 2, 3 years, and all of a sudden they're gone, going somewhere else to, and it's like, what else could we have done?
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point, and also, very objective one too, because it is. I mean, the case is like, yeah, if you, you play at North Dakota and then you play the NHL for 15 years, that's great. Most people are never going to have that experience though. Most people who play college hockey will not make the NHL, and then they're going to be stuck with whatever degree they have, trying to build their life outside of professional hockey.
Yeah,
Um,
the average pro career, I think, is 5 years, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
not just
if
in
you
North
make it. So
America. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and that for most guys is going down levels in North America or
right.
going overseas,
Yep.
and that it's not easy.
No.
Guys make good livings over there, but that's, that I don't think that's the path that a majority of guys saw or were told. Like,
Well, yeah, I think everyone envisions like, okay, if I'm going to this, powerhouse hockey program, I'm going to the NHL. That's my goal. And
mhm.
anything less is kind of a failure to a certain extent in their heads.
Oh yeah, no, I know, and then that's part of the recruiting battle that we fight. And when we're fighting with a school that's not an Ivy League school, it often does come down to the money, if it's a big factor or not. Because if kids are deciding between us and a hockey school, for example, like
Yep.
it is like I'm sure there is a high value in the education, but they're being pulled in that direction because there's probably money involved. Um, and obviously the opportunity optics, you get into all that, but
Sure.
um, it is interesting. And then when we fight with other Ivy League schools, it really is, what am I going to give you every day as a hockey player to make you better and to give you a shot at playing high level pro hockey, with this degree in your back pocket?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I have to prove to you. And obviously we'll show you all campus, we'll tell you how things work, but that I can't change that. Right? And I can't hold your hand to class or do that stuff. Campus is campus, and the Yale experience is the Yale experience. I think it's pretty awesome, but
Yeah.
that's for
Yeah.
you to
Well,
decide. And
I've heard good things. Yeah.
yeah, hey, and but what I need to show you as a recruiter, as a coach, is how I'm going to help you and make sure that you're best set after 4 years to keep playing hockey. It's like our captain a couple of years ago, he was a biomedical engineering major, just a fascinating guy. Mike Young is his name, and he went over. He played in France's top league last year. He came back, and now he's studying for his MCAT, and he's going to go to med school. And I told him, you keep playing as long as you can because you can always come back and do
Sure.
that. And I get it. Going being a doctor, he'll be like 35 by the time he's finally a doctor. But
Yeah.
for most guys that ask for advice or like, you earned this degree, play and have these experiences. And like I should have, in hindsight, made a jump over to Europe and tried that at a certain point in my career. And I was scared. I didn't know what to expect, what it would be like. And watching our guys now go and give it a shot and have success and have a lot of fun and have these crazy experiences. I'm jealous of it. And but that those doors open for those guys. And then when they want to move on, they put themselves in such a great spot. And that's what people don't understand because the majority of people, like you said, aren't playing for 10, 15 years.
Right.
Um, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, no, I mean it makes sense. And yeah, obviously Yale has that kind of dual threat option that a lot of places can't offer because you get a great head start in your career by having that, Yale degree, that you don't necessarily get at other places. So if you don't make it to the pros, which most
Yeah.
people find is the case. So
No,
um
and that's the thing. That same captain,
yeah,
biomedical engineering major, like intense. He was at Skill Skates at least once a week with us, 8 in the morning. And that to me was that's an example I use a lot because he, despite the demands of what he was doing on campus, he was a hockey player and he was a leader of our team, and
Yeah.
he did a great job. Like that's you can't sneeze at that. That's impressive.
No, that totally makes sense. So what was that transition like then for you going from college hockey to the NHL?
So it was my experience at the end of my senior year playing in Providence in the AHL was really important for me. I had been to development camps, but that jump and being in it daily was really important to kind of see for me like how guys handled themselves, what the day to day was like. It really made when I got to training camp in the fall a more comfortable experience, feeling like I kind of knew what I was doing a little bit. And even being in Providence and like we lost in the first round of the playoffs, and even just seeing the ramp up to play, like these guys have played 70 something games. It was really valuable for me to see that. And then that fall, and I was helped by some injuries in training camp, but it I went into that and I was just like, okay, let's put our best foot forward and see what happens. And I had a really good camp. I had some good preseason games, um and it just felt like what was I going to lose? I liked Providence. I liked those guys down there. I knew what I was going to get down there. Let's see what happens. And that got me onto the team out of camp, and I was able to play a few games to start that year. And and then the rest of the year in Providence was awesome. Like that time, we had a really good team. I learned so much, and I had a couple of injuries through the year, which kind of stunk and kind of held me back a little bit. But that all of that experience was really good, and that kind of built to my second year where I was playing really good hockey in the AHL, and physically those 4 years at school. I was my ideal weight. I was as strong as I had ever been. I was as confident as I had ever been. Like that's what got me ready. And that's what made the transition. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, I've never played hockey at this level before. I was like, okay, this is really close to this. And these guys are bigger and stronger and faster again and more talented, but I was ready to do that. And that's the goal of what I'm doing now, what our coaches did then, like that got me ready. And that was the what made the transition not crazy.
Right, right. What was your first game like in the NHL?
So we were in Columbus, and we I think we won that game 6-3. And I think Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak had 6 points each, or at least 5 points each. And they were unbelievable, and um, it was crazy. But the game never felt like it was in jeopardy. Like the Bruins were really good, um, and I I could probably tell you like one shift, like one thing that happened, but I don't I don't remember much anything else because it really was such a blur. Um, but the really cool one, and it's actually the only loss of the three games that I played. The second game that I played was in Toronto, and it was Matthews' first game at home after he scored four against Ottawa. So that was really cool. But yeah, that first one was just the whole thing. Guys putting money on the board, just how the guys approach the game. I mean, Zdeno Chara taking the rookie Brandon Carlo and I to the board to look at their roster and telling us what all their guys are good at. Like it was just such a. I mean, I know I've said whirlwind a couple times, but that's what it was. It was crazy.
Yeah, Zdeno Chara, having him on your team must make you made you feel small, and you're 6'4", right? So
Yeah, you feel very safe around a guy
yeah,
like that.
yeah. I want to be next to this guy on the ice. Yeah,
Yeah, I like him.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, sounds like a pretty amazing experience, especially given your backstory of not even sure if you're going to play at the highest level in college hockey, and then you're in the NHL playing. with Zdeno Chara and all these other guys. So
It's a process. It's a journey. That's what people don't realize as much either. And everyone's different. It looks different for everyone. But hello, lady. Um, but yeah, no, that's it's I got very lucky. Yeah, that's what you look at. Like that's the word to use. If I didn't, I actually I wonder all the time, like if I didn't go to Milton, if I didn't choose to try to take that shot, what happens? I don't know. But it really is remarkable. I'm very lucky.
yeah, no, it makes sense. So what made you return to Yale then?
So I don't even know if I would have admitted it in the moment, but I was on the tail end of things. I had a back surgery. This shoulder is a disaster. And so I played my fifth year pro in Hershey, and I was in Springfield when our season was canceled with COVID in 2020. And so March 2020, I got cleared to play from this shoulder that morning. And we got to the rink and our season was canceled. Um, so then I went into the summer, so to speak, um, really determined to continue playing. And that didn't happen until February of the following year, but that gave me 11 months to really focus and say, hey, like if I'm going to play one more year at least, how can I prepare myself for that? And I was able to go all in, and but during that time, I kind of decided that I wanted to try coaching afterwards. Um, and so I started calling. Hi. I started calling all of the coaches that meant a lot to me through the years. And that was from the coach at Milton, who took the shot on me, Coach Elaine at Yale, five or six people that I just wanted to pick their brain. Like, how did you get into it? What is the day-to-day like? What can I do to be proactive? And that was helpful because and I still, in my mind, it was like, okay, you're preparing for after, but that you keep pushing that as far as you can. So then I played in Hershey in 2021. And it was the most fun I had playing pro hockey in my 5 years. It was a great group of guys. There wasn't a fan in the stand until like our last 5 games. It was just such a weird experience. We were testing twice a week. Like, it was so weird, but it was also like I had finally given myself a release to just play. Where it goes, it goes. I kind of knew that I wasn't going to play in the NHL again, and I was okay with that for the first time in my pro career. And it was great. I had so much fun. And so after that year, because of that, I went right back to training. But in that window, I was way more proactive with Coach Elaine and some other guys of saying, hey, like, can we do a mock interview? Like, just so I'm dipping my toe in even more and showing my interest to people that I cared about. And Coach Elaine and I, because he said, hey, let's sit down and talk, and it'll be like an interview, and it'll be helpful for me. And we were both supposed to be working at camp in Connecticut. I drove down and we talked for like 4 hours. And it just felt like we were catching up and we were talking hockey. And I walked out of there having missed like half the day of that camp. And I called my parents. I was like, oh, I caught up for so long. It was great. And then my mom or dad on the phone was like, was that the interview that he promised? I was like, it might have been. Um, and 2 weeks after that, maybe not even that long after that, one of the assistants left. And he gave me a call and said, are you serious about this? And I said, yes, absolutely, I am. I can't tell you right now if I'm ready to make the jump, but if this is where the level, like if you're saying that I could potentially start at a place like this that means so much to me at the Division I level, how do I say no to that if that's something I really want to do? And similar to going to Milton, it there was like a very small window of time where I was playing and then I wasn't playing anymore. And then I was going to watch hockey games and start trying to figure out recruiting. And it was like ripping the Band-Aid off again, but I couldn't say no to that. My career, like I didn't have a contract. I was probably going to go to a training camp, but then who knows? Um, and again, like I was falling apart, um, and I made the jump, and it was, um, I mean, I'm so grateful. It's guys grind for years to make it to the Division 1 level, and I was fortunate enough to start here and for a place that means more to me than just any literally the other 63 whatever schools there are in Division 1 hockey. Like this is the place that matters the most to me and where I want to be, and under a coach who's done everything from the NHL to Europe. Like he's just learning from him, learning from Joe Howe, our other assistant. It's been these 3 years have been tough because we haven't been winning. Um, but as a coach, I've taken huge steps, and those guys are to thank for that. And it's been it's been great. But that's kind of that's how I ended up coaching, and I'm really grateful that I did.
Yeah, it definitely seems like an ideal fit to start off a new career trajectory, and also talk about like full circle to go back to Yale. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I was surprised. Yeah, when I saw that, yeah, you ended up as Yale's assistant coach. I was like, wow, that's cool. So,
No, hey, I agree, and it really like the fit was it. Like Joe, our other assistant, he's a goalie by trade, but he worked under Montgomery, who's with the Bruins now. But when he was at Denver, and he works with our forwards, he does our power play, and my forte is defense and the penalty kill, and it was a perfect fit. Like honestly, it couldn't have worked out better. I got very lucky.
yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, so it's be exciting to see kind of where your career goes from here, and definitely a cool journey ahead. It seems so.
Hey, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, what would you say is the best way for people to keep track then of your career moving forward?
I I following our team
Yeah,
is it's something that I will always plug because
yeah,
I think and this is on a very big aside, but we're going to put a little more emphasis on our social media and having our guys
okay,
more spotlighted. Um, but I don't post much, but I'll always repost when our guys are doing something well or when we get a recruit or anything like that, and that's mostly on Instagram. I wouldn't say
okay.
I'm too
So
active anywhere else.
so people
Uh,
can follow you on Instagram then.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I have an X too, but again, mostly
Yeah.
reposting good Yale hockey stuff or guys that I was fortunate enough to be around through the years. But yeah, I think follow our team because I kind of similar to when I made the jump. If it was somewhere else, I would have had a much harder time saying yes and going for it.
Sure.
This is where I want to be. I love this place. And again, learning from the guys that I'm surrounded by and finally starting to get some of our recruits in, like following our team is probably the best way to keep track of me.
Right. Awesome. Well, Rob, thanks again for coming on and sharing your story and your experiences and all this interesting details I never knew about Yale hockey. And yeah, just an amazing story that I hope that more people will find really interesting, because it is one of the great hockey stories that I can remember in my lifetime. So
I agree.